General Dynamics' $60 million shakedown will not work for Maine. Please contact your representatives and tell them to vote no on LD 1781.
Greetings, I'm Bob Klotz. I'm very honored to be here today with Bruce Gagnon of Bath. We're going to be talking about the bill LD 1781, which is a bill that has been submitted to support General Dynamics in Bath, parent company of Bath Iron Works, with $60 million. And there's more detail to that. So why don't I turn to you, Bruce, and fill us in on what's going on.
Well, General Dynamics is one of the richest corporations on the planet. Last year they made $3 billion in profits and paid their chief executive officer $21 million in salary and stock options. What's interesting to know is that between 2009 and 2017, General Dynamics had so much cash on hand that they sold back $14.4 billion, that's with a B, $billion in their own stock, or they bought it back rather. They bought back their own stocks, driving up the value that made these stock options of the executives even more lucrative. And so this is a strategy that all these corporations are doing now. In fact, there was a story in the New York Times the other day saying that most of the money that the corporations are getting from this new Trump tax cut, in fact, General Dynamics, their rate dropped down to 19% now. They're doing buybacks with most of the profits that they're now getting from this new tax cut, rather than investing in jobs, investing in new production, things like that. So just as people suspected, the greedy corporations are just getting greedier. So General Dynamics is doing this. They're making massive amount of money. And now they're coming to Maine and saying, we want $60 million from a state that is flat broke, that has massive needs across the state. And we've been running a campaign for the last 2 months opposing this around Maine.
And this isn't the first time that you've opposed or that this ask for $60 million has come up. This was preceded by 20 years prior, correct?
Yeah, in 1997, General Dynamics extracted $200 million out of the state of Maine. They've extracted in 2013 about $6.5. Well, they went to Bath, city of Bath, and asked them for $6.5 million. We organized a local campaign in our community. I live in Bath. About 6 of us. We went door to door. We organized public events. And much to our surprise, the people of the city put so much pressure on the city council that they very reluctantly agreed to cut this request in half. And so if the city of Bath could do that to General Dynamics, right, to Bath Iron Works, then why can't the whole state say, wait a minute, let's stop this nonsense, right? Because who knows BIW and General Dynamics better than the residents of Bath, Maine?
And this seems to me like it's not just double dipping, but whatever multiple dipping numbers you could use, because I'm correct in understanding that these contracts that Bath Iron Works General Dynamics is working on comes from the taxpayer to begin with through defense.
The federal government.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then they turn around and ask for more funds both from the state and from the city. They also seem to be pretty clear in these, what sounds like threats to me, that we will have to leave the state if we're not going to, if we're not able to be competitive with other shipyards, et cetera. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, they constantly, we heard that in 2013 when the vice president of Bath Iron Works came to the city council in Bath and basically said that if we can't remain competitive, if we can't get your donations to us, which is, $3 million from the city of Bath that they ended up getting. I mean, that's like a drop in the bucket in their $31 billion operation, right? I mean, it's nothing.
Right.
But they did. They create this veiled threat that we're not going to be competitive. We're going to have to maybe even move. We might have to close down. And so they're constantly dropping that line out there. It's really very disingenuous.
And what are the realities about being competitive? I mean,
Well, let's get back to your earlier point that I think is really important. The federal government pays for the whole freight, okay? They sign a contract with General Dynamics to build warships. It covers everything. Recently, we've been hearing some politicians in Maine saying, oh, they need money for training because they're having all these new young workers come in and they need money for training. Well, training is already in their original contract. Salaries are in their contract. Equipment, materials to build the ships, the steel, all right? And a healthy profit, all right? Everything is covered. And one thing we learned during the public hearing in Augusta, when the Taxation Committee had the public hearing on this bill, is that even the taxes that General Dynamics pays to the state of Maine for Bath Iron Works, their state taxes, even that is reimbursed in the federal contract. So their costs are virtually none, right? Yeah. And so then on top of that, they're then coming back to us asking for more at a time when 43,000 children in Maine are living in poverty and the state has no money to deal with that. Tens of thousands of people need health care, and the state share of Medicaid to bring these people in is almost $55 million. The Department of Transportation is saying they need $60 million from the state to deal with roads that they can't afford to keep in good shape, to deal with 33% of their bridges that are deficient, structurally deficient, and a whole host of other problems across the state right now. Homelessness, opiate crisis. So where is Maine going to get all the money to do that when we're handing over $60 million to one of the richest corporations on the planet?
And I think it was a defense contractor who referred to the quote that I've heard now a couple times, that Boeing makes jet fighters, Raytheon makes missiles, General Dynamics makes money.
That's right.
It seems like they do it very well.
It was in Fortune magazine that was reported.
Yeah.
And they do. They make huge money. And they're just ripping us off. They're also right now hitting up Connecticut for $150 million. They've already extracted millions from Rhode Island and Kentucky, where they also have operations. So they're going around the country, hitting up states, hitting up cities, but it's not the states and cities' job to fund the Defense Department. The federal government does that. And so we need the voters in Maine to call their state representatives, to call their state senators, to email them immediately and say no way to this GD corporate welfare giveaway. No way.
And I know there's been a lot of effort on that level, grassroots and otherwise, to get people to do that. What's your sense of how that's going, and how do people actually do that most effectively, would you say?
Well, we've heard repeatedly from various members of the state legislature that are on our side that are telling us that the calls and emails are coming in very rapidly. We heard the other day from one of the editors of the biggest papers in Maine, told a particular friend who I'm looking at right now that they were getting a lot of letters, correct?
Yep.
Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had tried to forward an essay basically about this, the theme of which was where the hell are all the liberals? Because as much as there has been a turnout in opposition to this bill, it just is amazing to me that the rooms are not filled, and that anyone who supported the principles of Occupy, anyone who's opposed to Citizens United, anyone who is against corporate welfare, anyone who is just shocked by this alleged federal tax reform that occurred at the end of the year. This is it right here. This is in our backyard, literally. This is something that arguably we could do something about. And it's not entirely crickets, but it's quieter than I would think. And it's striking how it's been quite a learning experience to see how the political parties play this game and the media. And so, yes, I was told by the editor that we've been getting a lot of letters. We've published a lot of letters about this, and we're not going to publish yours. But the point I want to go back to him about, I'm not taking, he can choose not to publish my letter, but there really isn't any editorial comment from them. There isn't any real review of the issue. I mean, it's really, you're getting letters to the editor, which is incredible, but it's the media isn't really speaking to it.
Well, you know, we recently had a trial in Bath at the beginning of February, the Aegis 9, for a protest at Bath Iron Works in a christening where 9 of us were arrested for standing by the public entrance with our signs. We didn't try to go in, we just stood by the public entrance. So we went to trial. The judge threw the case out, dismissed it, and he said that we were illegally arrested, and he said that the Bath Police Department had been outsourced to Bath Iron Works. Well, I would submit that the media in Maine, by and large, has been outsourced to General Dynamics and Bath Iron Works, and that the state legislature has, by and large, been outsourced to General Dynamics. In where I live, we have a newspaper called the Times Record, and our little local peace group, Peaceworks, has for the last 3 years, twice a month, had a column in that paper. We've taken turns writing that piece, you know, that column. Recently, my turn came up, and I wrote one about this, and the editor said he wouldn't print it. And as a result of that, I put it on my blog and said, here, you decide to the public, you know, do you think this was worthy of being printed? And he saw that and became very offended. And just last night, sent an email to one of our people saying that he was canceling this op-ed in the paper.
The column you've had for
the
years.
Column for 3 years. So to me, this illustrates this outsourcing of the media to the interests of Bath Iron Works and General Dynamics.
Well, and the bill is an outsource, right? I mean, the bill basically came from BIW through this representative DeChant in Bath.
There's a reporter that lives in Rhode Island that did a Freedom of Information Act request with Jennifer DeChant, the representative that's sponsoring the bill. He asked for all of her emails on her state account, and he got them, and he discovered in there that she was essentially an empty vessel that was just taking the bill that was developed by Bath Iron Works lawyers and Freddie Flaherty, the big law firm in Augusta, their corporate lawyer. They wrote the bill. They gave it to her to take into the public hearing, to make a presentation, and then at work sessions following to make an amendments. But she wasn't able to explain the bill. She had to turn her head and say, you might ask them behind me, meaning the Freddie Flaherty lawyer and the Bath Iron Works lawyer.
Her own bill.
So it was clear. And in fact, in that series of emails, they discovered that she was begging them for talking points, begging the Bath Iron Works vice president for talking points in order to sell the bill.
Right.
When I had a op-ed published in the Portland Press Herald almost 2 months ago, and she saw it and freaked out, and at 4 in the morning wrote the Bath Iron Works VP and said, give me talking points. There's this op-ed out there.
Gagnon guy stirring up trouble.
So that's pretty amazing, really.
Right. Well, and the bill's been co-sponsored by all the leadership of both parties. I mean, it almost feels like it's a done deal from the get-go. However, my observation is that your efforts, the campaign to oppose this overall, which is not just you, as you were referred to by the vice president of the BIW as the one-man band. It's a much bigger band. It's an orchestra, really, of people who are showing up to these hearings, signing petitions, writing letters to the editor, contacting the legislator. What you've got to go up against is dramatic, but the success seems to be you're now moving to a 4th working session. I mean, I don't know if that's unheard of, but it seems kind of substantial that something that I think they wanted to slip under the cover of darkness has gotten a little more attention than they wanted it to get.
I think that's true. And just this morning, it's a Saturday as we're taping this show, and I listened for an hour to Chris Busby, who had that wonderful The Bollard story called Ship of Fools, front page story. He did a subsequent update to it that he put on his website And he was on WGAN, the conservative political talk show, and there were about 10 or 12 callers, and everyone except one was opposed to the bill, including John McDonald, the host of the show. And so I think this is telling us something, that this is not a left-right issue, that fiscal conservatives, libertarians, they oppose corporate welfare. So-called liberals, progressives oppose corporate welfare. So this is an issue cutting across the state here. Yeah. But this logjam that you described that we're seeing in Augusta, though, is real. And I had a email the other night from a state representative up in the Brooksville area who's opposed to this.
Okay.
And he wrote to me saying what is actually happening is the lobby. He kept talking about the lobby is behind this. He said that both parties get money for their political action committees. The leadership of the parties have these political action committees. It's funded by the lobby in Augusta, mostly corporate money. They then use that money to dole out to various members of the legislature, and they appoint compliant, I would say, or not very aggressive or passive people to be committee chairs. They give them that job, and they get money from the chairs. From the leadership once they're made chairs. And so that's how the corporate lobby controls what happens in Augusta. So whether you're Republican or Democrat, it really doesn't so much matter. The whole system is now corrupted by this corporate money, and this is what we're up against. But we're trying to expose this. At the same time, we're fighting this bill, all right? We're trying to shine a light on this corruption that exists not only here in Augusta, but in Washington and every other state of the union, as we see this corporate takeover of democracy in America, this drowning of democracy in America. So this fight is not just about this bill. This fight is about this corporate takeover. So as you think about helping us, think of it in the broader sense then, that what you're doing is helping to defeat this system that is really destroying our country.
Without question. And bringing it back to the state, in a state that has gotten failing grades for transparency and ethics, which again, no one is really speaking to that, but here it is again. And for me, the thing I see is many people are hypnotized by the jobs, jobs, jobs mantra. And it would seem to me that any politician, especially one who's looking for re-election, would be afraid to go against saying no to this bill, because it would imply that they weren't supporting the workers at BIW, et cetera.
You would think so, but they need to hear from people. I think they're feeling the pressure.
Yeah. And speaking of pressure, you are very committed to this campaign on a very personal level. Tell us about your hunger strike commitment.
I began a hunger strike on February 12th. So as we tape this show, I'm in my 20th day. I've lost about 12 pounds. But the real purpose of it is twofold. One is a very personal purpose. After the public hearing, I came home the entire way back from Augusta to Bath. I was cursing up a blue streak, just deeply offended by these corporate powers that I saw manifested at the public hearing. Right. Everybody that spoke, every citizen that spoke in that public hearing opposed the bill. The only people in favor were the corporate attorneys. But it was this disgusting display of power and arrogance and control. And so I was laying in bed that night, and I told my partner, Mary Beth, that if I don't go on a hunger strike, I'm going to have a heart attack before this is over. I'm so furious. I've done them before, always in solidarity with someone else that was on a hunger strike. But they make me more serene. And so I said, I've got to do that. So on personal level, that's why I started it. But on a political level, I knew as an organizing strategy that if I could go without food for an extended period of time, it would help draw others into this campaign. It would help get others involved. And you yourself have joined this fast by fasting for days at a time. I found out last night there's a woman in Massachusetts, an old friend of mine. She's been hunger striking the entire time that I have been too, and is doing it with me all the way. And there's at least 25 people that we're aware of around Maine that are joining the hunger strike at various times during it. So other people, it's brought other people in, and other people are doing more work, more organizing as a result of this little bit that I'm doing here.
Well, I don't think it's a little bit, and it really has woken people up. Again, I asked you at the beginning, what do you expect the impact to be? Because in my organizing, there's oftentimes just a little too much of a hyper focus on tactics and what shiny thing can we go and do next. And it was really, really eye-opening to hear your response, really coming from a very spiritual place, which I think has inspired others to engage. And it's how are you doing? How are you feeling with it?
Actually, I'm having a lot of fun.
Okay.
And that's because there are a lot of people. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've organized peace walks from one end of the state to the other. So we've passed through a lot of communities around Maine and made a lot of friends. And so it's really exciting to see in all these places people jumping in, being engaged, writing letters to the editor, making the phone calls, getting others to do that. And so it's what I call when you bring good people together, sparks fly, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, no question about it. You had today, there is a Lenten vigil that started on Ash Wednesday. This has gone on for 15 or more years, yes? And help me, the group is the Smiling Trees Disarmament Farm, which is a Catholic workers group?
From Hope, Maine. They're the sponsors. And so at Bath Iron Works, every Saturday during Lent, and then also in the Christmas season during Advent, we do every Saturday vigils there too. So we have many different times of the year, and then of course all the christenings and a few other occasions. So we're at Bath Iron Works quite frequently for protests. And during this hunger strike, I've been going every day during the week. So I've been doing between the hunger strike during the week and then the Lenten vigils. I've been doing 6 days a week vigiling at Bath Iron Works. And I've been speaking to a lot of workers.
Yeah, tell us about that. I want to hear what that is.
Well, I'm hearing from workers, quite a few, that are saying, we don't support this bill either. Because in the last contract with General Dynamics, in our union, they say, they squeezed us hard. We got no pay raises for 4 years. They cut back our health care. They cut back our retirements. And so they're squeezing us at a time their profits are expanding. Their CEO making $21 million last year. They're spending $14.4 billion buying back their own stocks and driving up the market value, all right? So the workers are really angry about this because they're getting squeezed, and they know, the articles are out there proving that the company is loaded and getting richer all the time. The CEO, Phoebe Novakovic, was quoted in an article after the Trump tax cuts were passed very recently, saying that we're very happy about these new tax cuts because it's reduced our corporate rate to 19%, and we're now loaded.
Right. Related, you've said it now a couple times, I just want to highlight something that really struck me from your Aegis 9 experience, et cetera. The concept of the christening of a ship. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Well, we say it's blasphemous to equate a warship that has nothing to do with defense. They say, oh, these ships are going to protect us. They're not defensive ships. They're offensive, forward deployed warships whose job it is to deliver a first strike attack. When the U.S., when George W. Bush in 2003 launched shock and awe on Iraq, the first shot fired was from a Aegis destroyer built at Bath Iron Works that fired cruise missiles into Baghdad, killing legions and legions and legions of innocent civilians. These warships are made to fight wars offensively. And now they're being equipped with so-called missile defense systems that are key elements in U.S. first strike attack war planning on Russia and China. And so these ships are being forward deployed to surround Russia and China. So when they talk about christening, giving it the blessing of Christ, we object to that in a strong way. And so the last 2 christenings, we've had a total of 21 people arrested at Bath Iron Works, and we're now planning for the next one as well.
And as if Christ would come attend these events himself. It doesn't seem to be.
You think about it.
Yes, yes. Again, there's a lot more to say about this. I guess you've been at this a long time. I've seen you be tireless with your work around peace and justice and this issue and so much more. What's your attitude overall? I mean, speak specifically to the outcome of the bill if you want, but just in general. I mean, is there hope in this? Are we wasting our time pushing back on these things?
Well, I think we have 2 choices as human beings. As American citizens, we have 2 choices. One choice is to crawl under the table where the rich are feasting and hope a few crumbs fall our way. And the other choice is that we fight to the bitter end, whether it's this bill or anything else that we care about. But let me say this. There's a problem that we have today that, as far as I'm concerned, oversteps every problem, and that's called climate change. So at Bath Iron Works, where they build these warships, we could be building rail cars, commuter rail systems running up and down the coast of Maine, connecting every part of the state of Maine. We could be building offshore wind turbines. The Gulf of Maine has more wind than any other place in America. We could be building tidal power systems. And this would, according to a study at UMass Amherst Economics Department, would create more jobs than we presently get building warships at Bath Iron Works. So we'd create more jobs, we'd be less violent around the world, and we would help in a small way solve for this growing problem of climate change. If we don't do it, our children and grandchildren have no future on this planet. We've got to move now to convert Bath Iron Works, and that's our primary message when we go there with protests today.
Good, good. Well, we have less than a minute. Moving towards a just transition is highly desirable, and certainly we would encourage people to contact their legislators. Can you just wrap up the to-do list for people who've been hearing you in terms of what to do next?
The bill is LD 1781, the corporate giveaway, corporate welfare check of $60 million for General Dynamics, one of the richest corporations on the planet. Call or email your state representative, your state senator, immediately, because this bill is coming to a vote soon. Tell friends about it and get them to do the same. There's a chance that we can kill this bill. It's already been delayed, as you said, 4 times now in the work session. The pressure is mounting on the state legislature. Help us defeat it now.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce, be well.
Thank you.
Yeah.